Are you ready to become the dad you were meant to be? Good, because this is the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast, where imperfect actions are better than perfect ideas, promises kept are more important than promises made, and nothing happens unless you make it happen. My name is Drew, father of three, the founder of the Epic Dad Company. My mission is to help dads up their game and become the husbands, fathers, and men they are called to be. We need epic dads now more than ever. And it is your responsibility and obligation to become the best father you can be and show your kids what is possible. Listen in for weekly tips, strategies, and actions you can take to go from average dad to epic dad. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the episode. What is up, and welcome to 2024 Epic Dads. This is your host, Drew Camp, the founder of the Epic Dad Company and host of the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast. And my mission with this podcast is to help dads level up and become the husbands, fathers, and men they are called to be. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in and to listening to the first episode of the new year. We have got a great episode today, starting us off with a bang, and you guys are going to love this interview today. But before we jump in and get started, I wanted to share a couple of quick updates to the show and to the Epic Dad Company as we ring in this new year. So first off, the show and the company have grown tremendously over the last year. 2023 was absolutely a year of transition for the company. It was a year of growth, a year of successes, and trust me, a year of a lot of failures. But if there is one theme that I can take away from 2023, it is that the time of Tedco being a side hustle is come to an end. Our mission to change the culture is way too important to relegate this show and this company to just a quote unquote side hustle. It is time to turn this into a real company. With real systems, real processes that can start creating the type of impact that we ultimately envision. And so and with the growth in 2023, it is 100% thanks to you guys. It's thanks to you, our listeners, our fans, our customers, and our community members. You guys have been nothing short of amazing in your support for us to change the culture by creating more epic dads. So with a deep and a very heartfelt thank you. I am glad to announce that in 2024, I will be making the transition from side hustle to full-time business owner. And this is going to allow us to grow even faster. It's going to allow us to launch more supplements for Tedco and to spread our message even further. And all of that is just not possible without you. So thank you. And secondly, a couple of quick updates about the podcast. I made a post the other day about our 2023 stats for the podcast. And it is very easy for us to get stuck in this comparison game, looking at your numbers versus their numbers and feeling like you haven't done enough or feeling like you're not as far along as you would like to be. But comparison is the thief of joy. And so as I look back at the 2023 stats from the show, I felt an immense accomplishment and immense gratitude for how far we have come as a community together. When I started this podcast in late 2021, I could barely muster up the courage to get behind the microphone, knowing that I had a message to share, but not being confident enough in myself, not being confident enough in my abilities or in my words to share. And as I look back, this was a huge disservice to every single dad out there. Sure, I was not the perfect father. I'm still not. I make mistakes every single day. But I had a message that would ultimately help fathers, and yet I was too scared to share it. Scared of what other people might think. Scared of what other people might say. Scared that I don't know enough. Scared that I'm not good enough. But as I look back on 2023, our podcast was listened to in 21 countries. It grew by 211% and was listed as a top podcast for 216 people around the world. So my challenge to you is this: start sharing. You have a unique voice. You have different experiences and different perspectives that other people will find value in. If you want to start something, just start and figure shit out along the way. All right, guys, with that out of the way, let's freaking crush 2024 and become the husbands, fathers, and men we are called to be. And to kick off the new year, we've got on Nate Feathers. Now, you might know him better by his social media handle, Dads Don't Babysit. I've been following Nate on social media for a while and think that his message is one that all dads need to hear. Nate is a father of five, ranging all the way from one in college down to changing diapers. and Nate brings a ton of experience, including past failures along the way, to this conversation. On this episode with Nate, we talk about the importance of purpose as a father, how self discipline leads to self growth, why personal excellence is the ultimate form of leadership, the importance of our words to our children, and how we can transition from traditional fatherhood and break generational curses. All right, guys, you are going to love this episode, with Nate. So without further ado, let's hop in. All right, Mr. Nate Feathers, dads don't babysit. What's up, my man?
What's up? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. I've been following you for a while on social media. Love the message you're putting out, and it obviously resonates with our core audience of being dads.
Right.
I wanted to bring you on, man. And like I said, our podcast is very unscripted, just kind of have a conversation. So I'd love if you, for people that are listening that don't know who you are, you can kind of give just a quick intro to like what you're doing right now, and then I want to back up and kind of go to the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I actually just came out of a very short season stint of Christmas lights. It's a business I started 10 years ago. And it was one of those moments where, it was conversation like, oh, we should do that because I was a roofer at the time. And it was one of those office conversations where everybody talks and then nobody does anything. And I walked away from that. Like, I bet I could pull that off. And I already have the insurance. I have all of this stuff. And then I went and visited my grandfather who happened who was in Pennsylvania. He happened to be dying of cancer. So we were going there to visit. My brother and I basically were like, we got to go visit him because this may be the last time we see him. And, when you're having those conversations like deathbed style, you just start sharing your whole life and stories. So my grandfather is sharing all these stories about how he worked in the steel mills his whole life. Well, he retired from that when I was 8 years old. And I was like, what are you going to do now? He's like, well, I'm going to find another job because if I stop working, I'll die. And I didn't get it at the time. I get it now. I'm like, oh, you just have to have purpose, right? But the other thing he started telling us about was how he would cut paper wood in the morning is what they called it. So they'd cut down these trees, take them to the paper mills, and they'd get paid per load. So he started like taking a load before he'd go to work and then taking a load after work. And then that got him into coal. And then he bought more trucks because he couldn't handle it. It's just like his business just kind of like organically built as people started using him and trusting him. And I walked away from that. It was actually the last conversations I had with him before he passed away. I walked away from that was like, that's in my blood. I can do this. So I started it. I was like, yeah, let's just do it. If I get one person to say yes to Christmas lights, that'll be crazy. And I got 3 that year. And this year, I think I was at about 150. And
No way.
it is a hauling like dusk till dawn kind of, or dawn till dusk and just moving. It's a season of craziness for sure.
Yeah,
So
well, I thought you were gonna tell me that like you were at your grandpa on his deathbed. You're gonna ask him like, what did he wish that he had done in his life? And he was like, I wish I would have started a Christmas tree light
yeah,
company.
right.
And then that would like solidify it for you.
No, it's business after business, and
Yeah.
I found that I really like, there's a lot of things I enjoy. I feel like I've been writing now. I'm working on a book at this moment. So I've been writing in the mornings and I was literally just writing how I think all of us guys are nerds. It just depends on whether or not what you nerd out on, right? Like, so some guys nerd out on football and stats and that makes them cool. Some guys nerd out on like Dungeons and Dragons and that may not make you so cool. You know what I mean? Like just depending. So like I nerd out on certain things and like business is one of those where if someone like asks me like or we get talking about that, I'm like, yes, like I love talking about how you can make money and how you can provide for your family and grow stuff. That's awesome. I am no Alex Hermosi by any means, but I love like from my aspect, I love going that direction. I nerd out on working out and the body and health and then I'm also from the church. And so like that's what I grew up in. And so like cultural historical background on like things Jesus said and what the Bible is talking about. That stuff gets me jacked too. So I'm a total nerd. So when it came to that, when he started talking about business, I was like, ooh, yes, that's exactly what I want to hear. So we
Yeah.
grew
No, what do you you got me like curious now because I'm a nerd on business too, right?
yeah.
And I thought about that because we live in a big neighborhood in Georgia.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't know, there's probably like 1,500 houses in our neighborhood. It's huge.
Mhm.
And I'm sure the dudes just clean up like with the Christmas light stuff because you go by and it's all like the ones that are like they look super professional. They're like on the roof, like outlining the roof and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that was professionally done, right? But like, what do you need to do that? You said insurance. Do you have to be like a insured roofer or something?
You don't have to be a roofer. You just have to have insurance in case you fall off their house. Because
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
yeah, what people don't know is that like if I'm working on your roof and I don't have insurance and I fall and I get hurt, it's actually on the homeowner. Like
Oh,
they'll
really?
like that's who they're going to require to handle that, or it's on their insurance company. So like it's stuff like that I mean, and that's the way it is for roofers and all that stuff, anyways.
Yeah,
But it's the same way for what I'm doing. But yeah, insurance is like the side of it for me that's like, you got to pay for that. But at the same time, yeah, these guys can clean up. And the beautiful thing is, in the side of the last 10 years, I've seen so many Christmas light companies show up, right? Just come out of the woodwork. Or I'll be
Mhm.
somewhere and I'm like, oh, this guy does that. Or I'll be on a roof and somebody across the street's doing one. And I'm the kind of guy that'll be like, hey man, how many houses you got done? How many you got left? Like I'm the guy that's like, what are we doing? But and even I've done that in the past, and my guys that are working with me are like, why are you talking to them? And I'm like, well,
Yeah, they're the
look around.
competition.
They're like, yeah, why are you talking to the competition? And I'm like, look around. This isn't
Yeah, how many
competition.
homeowners? How many homeowners? Are in the United States and are in your town? Like, yeah, there's plenty to go around.
Like when I say I have 40 people in one neighborhood, there's like 500 houses in that neighborhood. You know what I mean? Or maybe more. It's like you could have multiple companies in there working. And I used to be a competition kind of guy, like scarcity mindset. And I'm just not anymore. I'm like, there's plenty for everyone. I think I actually said this on another podcast, but I found out recently that oil it's been called a fossil fuel like my whole life, but how apparently the earth is still making it. And so
Oh
we
yeah. Uh-huh.
it's not renewable. And I'm like, that right there tells me that the earth is here to like, not for us to exploit, but for us to use because there's an abundance in this life.
Mhm.
So there's always more, there's always plenty for everyone to have and do and be. You just got to go do it. And so that's what I tell my kids. I'm like, competition is great, but if you're striving to be the best you can possibly be, you may very likely become the best in that industry or the best in your whatever. But the truth is, there may always be somebody better, and there's always plenty. So like as I've grown mine, now I have clients that don't pay very much because they've been with me for years. Some of them I want to keep because they're awesome people, and I'm just going to leave their price the way it is. Some of them are really annoying, and I don't need them. And it's like I'm going to raise their price to where I would charge now, like what I would charge a new person. And if they bail on me, well, I can give like somebody else will pick them up that
Mhm.
isn't as far along in it as me, and that helps them get business going and they can learn and all that, and it helps me offload like people that aren't working for me right now and that kind of stuff. So I feel
Yeah.
like there's ebb and flow that just makes there's so much for everyone that yeah, I'm like, yeah, come on in, start doing a Christmas light business.
Yeah. I mean, I would like two things on that. Like one is the abundance mindset, right? Like I love that. Right. And I mean, you look at really any industry across business, there's a lot of customers, man. There really are, and if your company's doing $100 million, like that's fantastic. There's still a lot of customers out there, right, that you haven't reached, and so there's definitely room for competition, and competition's healthy, right? It's going to help us become better at what we are. But then too, you mentioned something about like action, right? Of like, hey, you heard it, around the water cooler or whatever, and then but you're the one that actually took action on it. Like we get so wrapped up in all these ideas, and but unless we take the first step, which is usually the hardest one of just like getting started, like nothing's gonna happen, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, I figured it all out in the field. I mean, there is one thing I think we talked a little bit about this the other day when we were kind of chatting about what we might discuss. But my dad, I had a great childhood growing up. I look back at that. I'm a guy where I would say it's kind of like, yeah, I don't have any issues or problems because of that. It was great. One of the things my dad like said about that like resonates with me is it really comes back to, you can do you can do anything you want, right? You just have to like go for it, work at it, and like do something. Like that's really the hardest step, but you can really go really far if you just start.
Yeah. So
So
so besides hanging out Christmas lights,
yeah.
which I'm sure it becomes like more than a full-time job in this time of year. What else you got going on, man?
So I am transitioning straight out. Like I basically decided, okay, this what we've my wife. I say we. I'm usually talking about my wife, but I am talking about the community of people that are part of this Dads Don't Babysit
Mhm.
like deal. It feels like a movement. Like I have been able to say so many times, I've posted something and I'll see, again, you can tell if it's a guy or girl, I think a lot of times in just how they respond, but I've seen women respond saying, I wish my husband or my ex would have said this or would have done this, or I wish there were more guys out there like you, which is always a weird one because I'm like, how do you handle that? But at the same time, I'm sitting inside of a place where I go, I'm connecting with guys like you. I'm connecting with guys all over Instagram they're doing it, right? And so now I actually feel like I feel like I'm just maybe even preaching to the choir, even though there are so many men out there that still need to hear this. I'm connected to so many men that are striving for it. So when I hear or see a woman type in, like, I wish this, I just usually respond like, so many men are rising, that the stats that I might post about single family homes, specifically single moms, and it's not a bash against single moms, it's just that when the dads leave. So for me, I'm going, it's a single mom home specifically because dad bailed out or, didn't show up. It's not like, that's the one I'm focused on. Like when I post those stats, it's a call to men to say, your job is important and these stats are your fault. But at the same time, I'm seeing men rise up in a way that I'm going, those stats are changing. Like within this generation, those stats are changing.
Yep.
And I love, like, I got chills right now. I love being a part of that. So I actually transitioned out. Like I knew I was coming into Christmas light season. I love that business. I will probably always have it or have it in some way, shape, or form where I'm connected to it. But I'm transitioning into we're taking the next steps as Dads Don't Babysit to really strive to help men in this movement even further. So book, speaking, things like that. That's where we're headed.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and you mentioned some people reaching out, right, and be like, man, I wish my husband would, was more like this, more like this. So, like similar experience, right? I mentioned we're in a big neighborhood.
Yeah.
And my family, we try to go for like after dinner walks or before dinner, but really just like evening walk, right? We do it pretty much every night unless it's like pouring down raining. And this happened a while back now, probably 6 months back, but it like always stick with me. It's like we were walking, and I've got my little son, his little cart, I'm like pushing him, my girls are running up there. And there's this mom, these new neighbors that moved in. I knew they had young kids, and she's out doing something in the yard. And she kind of just stops us for a second. And she's like, you guys, I see you out here all the time, like walking, like that's awesome. And my wife was talking. She was like, yeah, we try to do it every night. And my wife said something about like, oh yeah, that's all him, pointing to me, right? Because I'm like the one that's like, hey, we're getting out and going for a walk, guys, And she said basically that same thing. She was like, man, I wish my husband would do that. And it's just like my heart sank, man, of just like he should, and then it wasn't but like 2 months later, right, that I see that dad out there like walking his kids, and I was just like, yes, so like even though most of us don't have a platform, right, of like an Instagram or YouTube or something where we've got thousands of men following us, it's like you could be the change in your neighborhood.
So true. So true. I love what you said there because it's like the thought I had was a rising tide raises all boats, but that's not really what it was. It's really like your own self-discipline, like called on the inside of that man. You're right, to go, I need to be more. And like that's the thing is when men step up, and I'm not saying it can't be women. I just like I'm a dude, so I'm gonna speak to those guys, right? When men step up and do the things that they're supposed to do, it not only makes it easier on the family to do the things they're supposed to do. I feel like my wife responds way better when I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I don't mean responds to me better, just responds to everything better when I'm doing what because it makes it easier for her to do that. That's a way I get to serve her. It's also the way I serve my kids. They do better when I have that kind of discipline and I become the best I can be. But it also becomes the example. I don't know if you follow him, but Ben Barker,
Yeah. I've connected with him a few times.
I love him so much that I just like I love his Alpha Dad stuff where he's like when I send somebody going by the Alpha Dad JoJo and you see this garage going up, I'm like, what's he gonna do? I love that so much. But when you're the guy that does that, the other dads, it calls to the whatever, I don't know, the masculinity, it calls to the testosterone in other men that are like, I need to step up my game. And I love that. I feel like, yes, you can speak. And I feel like I've been given the ability to do that, to speak. But when you are when you are willing to do all of those things that make you the best, the people around you are like, I got to step up my game, and they'll level up. So like as you're spot on with the guy, like your guy in your neighborhood. And I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it just we can have tremendous impact in the micro, I think, and we lose sight of that again because we feel like, oh well, I don't have an audience, or who's going to listen to me, right?
Right.
But just those little things that you do could just have a tremendous impact with, and then you never know, right? Like not saying that I'm like the perfect dad, because I'm not in any shape, or form at all. But like, who knows, man? That dad, right? That might have been like the first step, right? Of like, cool, I saw this as an example. I'm being called forward into this, and so I'm going to take that first step, right?
Yeah.
And so, who knows what happens after that first step?
Yeah, the discipline in one area usually bleeds over into others. So he may set up like, oh, we're going to take walks at night. And then that becomes his thing. Like, we take
Mm-hmm.
walks with the family in the evening. Well, now it's time with family and it's exercise. Like, that may all of a sudden he starts going, we should eat better. And then it's how do we cook better meals? And now we'll eat at home more. And it just bleeds over into that. And then it's, I know I walk, but maybe I should get in the gym. And it just keeps
Mm-hmm.
growing to where the guy looks back 2, 3, 4 years later, and he's more connected with his wife. He's more connected with his kids. He's more connected with himself. And he's just become a totally different human. Like that for me, I get chills when I talk about it, because that's all, like, I'm all for men stepping up and becoming all of that. Like, I don't care what you want to do. If you want to be a chef or you want to be a teacher, like, becoming that enables that so much more. I mean, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, you said something there too. You said like, when we're doing the right things, then people in our lives start to show up better too. But
Yeah.
like what define what do you mean the right things? Like that's I have a sense, right? But
Yeah.
what do you like when you're firing all cylinders, you're doing the right things? Like what does that look like?
Well, I mean, it starts in your home, right? And I feel like this isn't new. This is just stuff I'm learning, but it's also stuff I can probably regurgitate from other guys that I follow. But like, when you start on yourself, so I decide in the morning I'm going to get up in the morning early and I'm going to go work out. So then I'm working out. Well, now I'm going to want to eat better. Well, in order to do that, I've got to cook breakfast or whatever when I get home. So now I'm probably going to start making eggs for the kids or making oatmeal for the kids as well. So now they're eating better. And then I'm having more discussions with my wife on how can we be more healthy? Because I don't know about you guys, but I was vegan for 4 years, and my wife hated it because she's like, we always got to cook separate meals. This is stupid. She's like, we eat meat and you don't. Like, yeah, you're right. But when you start eating healthy, and maybe not with veganism, but like when you start eating healthy, you as a family start eating healthy. So now you're leading by just the example of, I'm not going to eat that. Right. And so then, well, now we quit making it. Well, I'd rather eat broccoli. So now broccoli comes into play, or we eat more red meat, or whatever that style becomes, to where you're eating healthier. Now your whole family's doing that. And then your kids are feeling better. So now their grades are getting better. Your wife feels better. Now you guys are more connected. When your wife feels less stressed and more happy and feels healthier, she's like, your intimacy probably rises. Like, all of those things start to rise. And all of that started off of, I'm going to get healthier. So for me, I became a better dad when I got healthy. I became a
Mm.
stronger person. I got a stronger mindset, which made me better in pretty much every area of my life. Like, a perfect example happened last night. I had written I'd like committed. I'm going to write 1,000 words a day until this thing is done. And I was talking with Ryan Mickler about that on the Order of Man. And I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
got to do that, man. He committed to that, and he wrote his book in like 90 days or something crazy. And I'm like, I want to do that. And again, that's him being the example. And then me going, I can do that. Like, he did it. I can do that. So yesterday morning, I wrote, and then I went on a field trip with my youngest son. So I had to stop early to get ready and go do that. And so I had only written about 700 words. And last night, just
Got to get on it.
things. Dude, it was late. Like, when I say this, it's like, it's embarrassing. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, I need to finish those words. And so I look at my wife, she's in bed. She's like, and I'm like, I got to do this. So I sat down in the computer, like in bed, and finished my 1,000 words, looked at the thing. It said I had 1,015 for the day. I closed it down and went to sleep. This morning I woke up and wrote another 2,000 words. I just got in a groove and was going. And it was like that discipline comes
Mm.
from like the desire to do the thing I'm supposed to do in the gym. Like the reason I did those extra 300 words literally comes from the fact that I was like, I'm going to do one more rep in the gym, or I'm going to do the exercise even though I don't want to do it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, what you said right there, right? Like, I'll equate it to something that I do, and guys that are inside of our Epic Dad crew, like on my community, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But we do 10,000 steps a day, and like
Yeah.
that's not obviously that's not as difficult as like writing 1,000 words.
Yeah.
But it's the act of committing to something and then following through on it, right? Even when you don't want to. I think it's what builds that discipline muscle, and really like to go to what James Clear says, Atomic Habits. It's like you're casting a vote like that you are the type of person that you want to become every time you do that. And so like it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be writing 1,000 words, it doesn't have to be 10,000 steps, but it has to be making a commitment to something and then holding yourself accountable to that, you know?
Absolutely. Well, like, and you've probably heard of 75 Hard with from Andy Frisella, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so that is a very like everyone wants to call that like a physical challenge. I know he hates it when you call it a challenge because it's not. It's like a mental program. It's a mental recalibration, and I love that concept because it changes how you do what you do, and like overcoming that voice inside. It's like I don't really want to do that, and then giving into
Hmm.
that voice. And I did 75 Hard before and saw the results, like felt good about it. There was a lot of the things that for me that I had already been doing. So doing that was like I only needed to add 10 pages a day and make sure I
Hmm.
followed a everything else was pretty much stuff I did, right?
Hmm.
Which it didn't make it any easier because you still got to do an outdoor workout in the rain. I mean, I remember it was like monsooning, and I'm like I was doing a walk with a vest, and I would do push-ups every 2 minutes, and I was doing that, and it just comes like it was coming and blowing in my face, and I started laughing, and I was like, no one else is out here doing this, and I felt like powerful. It was hilarious. But my wife looks at me and she goes, you do all these things. So 75 Hard, although it was difficult, is not something that is not a struggle for you like it was for
Hmm.
somebody who's just starting out. She's like, your 75 Hard needs to be, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to do 1,000 pages. And so it still
Yeah.
gives the blueprint to go, what are the things that I'm committing to that I'm going to do? And these are promises to myself that I'm going to do it no matter what. By the end of the time, by the time I go to bed, that will have been done. And that's what I loved about the 75 Hard program. And that's that recalibration of your mind where when where Andy Frisella calls it the bitch voice, when that bitch voice comes in,
Hmm.
you're like, no, 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 I do what I said I would do because I said I would do it. And that makes right there, I feel more powerful just saying that out loud. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's huge.
Yeah, and I struggle with that bitch voice too all the time, right? Like every day, you know.
Yeah.
My big one right now is cold baths in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we live in Georgia, so a little bit south of you.
Yeah.
But it's been getting pretty chilly, right? And winter's cold bath season, so I just fill up the tub and then
Yeah.
just let it sit overnight. And dude, it's so freaking freezing in the morning. And and what sucks about it is just that it's first thing in the morning, right? Like if I wait until later in the day and it's like mid-afternoon and I go in it, it's still cold, but it's like
Yeah.
it's bearable, right? I can sit in there for forever. But it's like the very first thing you do
Yeah.
is like you get up and you go down there and then you're just like, oh my God, man, I do not want to freaking do this, bro. But it's that voice that like you fight with it every single morning, you know what I'm saying? It's always there. And then and I want to address one thing too, like so I get a sense that like we're very similar. Like we have like these lofty goals, like we're hard chargers going after it and stuff, right? And I feel like sometimes that can leave some people in the dust, right? And speaking really specifically, like to our spouses. And so I don't know if you struggle with that. I'd love to hear it, but like that's something I've struggled with a lot. Is like I'm going after these things. And not that I'm like forgetting about my wife, right? But like it is I need to prioritize that as well and just one caveat that I want to get your perspective on it is I think at some point in time, if you're consistent with it, right, is your wife will catch up at some point. And like perfect example, like I said, 10,000 steps a day. So I think I missed it once the entire year. And that's when I
Cool.
was like dog ass sick. It's like I don't even remember what happened, but like really, really sick. And I was like, all right, I'm not doing this today. But outside of that, I've done it every single day. And about a week ago, I don't know if I just been like sitting down in front of the computer all day or something, but it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I was like, dude, I'm at 2,500 steps for the day. Like that's terrible. And yeah, and like I looked at my wife and I was like, I don't know. Like I think I'm just gonna skip it tonight and like go to bed and like I'll do my burpees tomorrow because like in our group, if you miss a non-negotiable, you have to like upload burpees.
Nice.
I was like fuck it, I'll just do the burpees. And then she was
Yeah.
like, "Are you serious right now?" And she was like, "You never miss your steps." She was like, "Go," and like she pushed me to go do it. So I think it's although our big goals and our lofty goals and us being hard chargers sometimes can build friction there. I think if we go about it the right way and we stay consistent, I think we can still make it work. I love your perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I love that. Actually, when I was doing 75 hard, I was trying to get the second workout in before, like sometime in the afternoon, so I didn't have to do
Yeah.
it at night. And it just felt like there was always something that would come up or something that overextended in work or whatever it was that just kept me late. And I would, for me, I have some non-negotiables that are like I refuse to do stuff that's gonna like overlap dinner. I mean, it
Mm.
may overlap the making of dinner, and my wife would be like, "Yes, you overlap dinner," but I literally like consciously go, okay, we're gonna eat dinner around 6. I got to be done by 6 because we're gonna eat. That I may have missed the making of dinner, and I'll probably do I have to clean up after, or is there something? Anyways, it's like I don't want to miss that because there's no phones, there's no toys, there's no TV at dinner time for us. Like we sit in
Mm.
there, we hang out, we play games, we do stuff like that at the table, and it's focused, and I love it, and I don't ever want it to be gone. And for me, I see my kids, like I see my 3-year-old and the kids today were talking about something where 14 years from now, and I was like, oh my gosh, she'll be 17. She'll be as old as my oldest daughter and like working her way out. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, it was one of those moments. So I see that in a flash and I'm like, stay young forever. So I don't want that to go anywhere. And so almost every night it would be like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And then I'm like, I gotta go, I gotta do my second workout outside. And dude, it got to the point where I really feel bad. It's almost like I was putting it on myself. Like I thought that I was projecting on my wife that I felt bad about it, but I felt like she was mad at me when I was probably just mad at myself. And so it got to the point where she's like, just go. Like this is what you're doing. Like you're holding on to do this. Just do it. And I think it comes down to, yeah, there's friction there first. Cause if you had asked me in the midst of 75 hard, like what was the hardest part about 75 hard, it was Megan. and, and she's like, she totally knows I say that. And she's like, yeah, because you're stupid. Like, this is ridiculous. But at the same time, it built so much. I felt like when I did it, there was so much respect that she had for me because she's like, my husband said he was going to do this and he's doing it. And I think that we forget that even in the midst of the friction, because our wives are very verbal communicators, right? They're going to tell you what's on their mind. They're very relational, way more than we are. We don't have a tendency to talk a lot, and they do more often than not. And so there's plenty of times where she tells me stuff. And I'm like, dude, why are you so mad at me? Like, why are you hating me right now? She's like, I'm just telling you what I'm feeling. I have a right to feel this. And I'm like, oh, you're not trying to change what I'm doing. You're just letting me know you don't like it. Got it. All right.
Yeah.
So I don't have to not do it. So there's friction there, but it's not really friction. You just don't like it at this moment. And you're just expressing that, even though you actually respect me for the fact that I'm sticking to what I said I was going to do. So I think there's a lot more in there that's nuanced than just it causes friction. And I also think that as they see your results, and that's the huge part, get the results. Because as the people close to you see your results, they want those same results. So they'll see the work you put in because no one sees that, right?
Hmm.
I have a friend from Australia and he says we're men of the dark because truthfully, the things we have to do to make us who we are so that what you see in the light, like we have to do that in the dark when no one sees us. And I
Hmm.
love that. But the truth is that our family sees that. And so that's the biggest example is that everyone on the outside of this sees, six-pack abs and, money in the bank and success. And you go into the house and they're like, they all in this house know what it takes to get there. And that's huge. That's
Hmm.
huge. That's
Hmm.
why, and I mean, I know we've talked about it, but that's why I say self-discipline is the best discipline for your children because they get to see that, but they see the example of who I'm becoming and the results I have because of the things I'm doing.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I love that, man. And you hit the nail on the head, right? It sets the example for them because they're watching, man, no matter what. It's whatever example you are setting, they're gonna see it. So
Yeah.
we might as well be setting the right one. So tell me about kind of growing up, like what was, childhood life for you? You kind of mentioned your dad a little bit, but you have this kind of tagline in your Instagram that says, something about like traditional parenting, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm pulling up right now. It says, transitioning parents from traditional parenting. So like, what do you mean by that and by like traditional parenting? What's wrong with traditional parenting?
I should probably say transitioning dads because I feel like it's big. It's bigger on the dad side of things.
Yeah.
What you see, and I'm going to speak in generalities because there are nuance to this. There are anecdotal things where guys aren't always like this, and that's okay. I'm probably more verbal than a lot of guys, so there's that. So I'm not. I don't fit that mold. But for the most part, when I talk about this, I'm like, most guys are X. Doesn't mean all of us are. So when I say traditional parenting, I look back on how did parents do things when I grew up in the 80s and 90s. How did my parents do things? How did their parents do things? And so when I look back, I'm like, what are the traditional styles? Well, the traditional styles of fatherhood are you do what I say, right? I run the show. Spanking is something that was pretty normal. I'll say I got spanked way more than my brother. He was like the golden child who didn't do anything wrong. Totally cool. No anger at that. It just different personalities. I
Yeah,
was like,
it's definitely not affecting you now,
yeah,
like
no.
later in life.
I was like, oh, that's the line. I guess I should cross that. And my brother was like, oh, that's the line. Stop. It's okay. So like I would say I got spanked more than he did, but my dad's like, I didn't beat you, and I'm like, I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying I got spanked. I know I did because I remember them. So spanking is pretty traditional. I know it's something that a lot of people talk about as a bad thing, but like yelling still is something that people do. And that's a pretty traditional, like I yell because you're not listening and you need to hear me. You need to respect me. Fatherhood, like we want to be respected by our wives and definitely by our kids. And it's like you will respect me and I'm going to enforce that as opposed to knowing that respect, honestly, in my opinion, respect is given when it's given, right? So my kids respect me as they feel that respect from me. And again, that's me being an example. So I see these as traditional things, and that's actually where my book is at. Is like, what are the default settings as in me as a dad? If I just became a dad and never tried to learn anything or change anything, how would I be a parent? Well, most of that's going to come from what I learned from being a child and being parented, right? And so those are the things. Again, like spanking, yelling. Children should be seen and not heard. That's one I've said in the past. I heard that so many times. And now, granted, my dad was a pastor, and we would go into nursing homes. So, like Christmas season, like I have Christmas season, we would go to like the nursing homes on Christmas Eve, and dad would do the Christmas stuff and give communion to all of the shut-ins. I don't even know if they're called that anymore. I don't know. Like that's what we called it when I was little. They're stuck in a nursing home, right? And then we go visit other people and stuff like that, or shut-ins that were stuck at their house. So our Christmas Eve was that, and then we would go do a midnight service at the church, right? But when we would get ready to go into the nursing home, he'd be like, "Hey, children are to be seen and not heard." And what he meant by that, I think, looking back as an adult now, he meant like, you can't be running around in here. There's tubes for their like oxygen. There's all sorts of people stuck to stuff. If you act like kids in here, we're going to have a mess and someone might die. That's probably where his head was. But what it comes across to a kid is like, don't talk. No one wants to hear you, those kind of things. And so, transitioning men out of that really is, children should be seen and not heard is a great one. I wasn't allowed to speak when I was a kid, right? Or if this isn't me specific, but this could be for lots of men. So you're going to hear me now. And I can't stand it when my kids don't listen because I wasn't listened to then. Well, now I'm big enough for you to force you to listen to me, right? Well, all that does is teach your children the same thing you learned when you were a kid. And if you don't change that, then they'll do the same thing to their kids. And they'll do the same thing to their kids. And you're perpetuating this constant feel that your voice doesn't matter and that you shouldn't be heard. And then turning around and inside your house, forcing your voice because they're supposed to listen to you because you deserve it. And so helping dads go, how do I look back on my own life and my own childhood? What affected me? And then I don't mean like it on a negative way. How do I change that for my own children so that I get the point across that you do matter, you should be heard, and you deserve to speak. And I in fact not only love you, but I like you. right? And so
Most of the
that's,
time.
yeah, right. Plenty of time. I mean, yeah, let's be real. There's plenty of times where they don't like us, we don't like them. And that could go for our wives too, right? Plenty of times, I don't like you right now.
Yeah, I love you, but I don't like you.
Yeah,
But
that's
no,
okay.
well, I was gonna say that this just it highlights like the importance for words.
Mm,
And I think that's something that we don't think about very often, right? Of like the way that we're phrasing things, how is this going to be thought about from a child and how that's going to affect them.
yeah.
Um, and like one example, I was on a podcast with God, who was it? I don't remember, so I'm not going to butcher it. I don't remember what podcast it was, but it was a great point,
Yeah.
whatever it was. No, it was Chris Rodat, Rising Father podcast.
Yeah.
And Chris was talking about yeah, the words that we say, and kind of the example that he gave was like calling a kid like lazy, right? And saying like, oh, you're just so lazy, right? And you say that kind of jokingly, right? If they aren't doing something like, oh my gosh, you're so lazy. And he was saying that his kid, would start to identify himself as that, right? Like, although it was a joke, like now all of a sudden it's ingrained in his mind that like, wow, I actually am a lazy person,
Yeah.
because it's getting reinforced all the time. They start to adopt that. And so like, it's just super important the way, not only the words that we do say them, but like the intention that we put behind them. And so, yeah, like I think just try to be a lot more intentional about it,
Yeah.
right? And think about what we're doing and what we're saying, how it's going to impact our kids.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that because one of the things my dad said that his dad said to him that actually came out even from the Christmas lights, like where I'm like, that's in our blood. I was like, that's in my
Mm,
blood. Is that my dad used to say, we're feathers. We do what's right because it's right, not because it's easy. We're made
mm,
of stronger stuff than that. And it's like I can still hear, wow, what is me getting chills today? Like when I hear that, I'm like, he was calling me to a legacy of how
yeah,
feathers are instead
yeah,
of saying you're you're lazy or you're not like you're doing this you're doing instead of doing that he was saying like you're part of all of us like we
mm,
as fathers we're made of sterner stuff than that and we do what's right because it's right not because it's easy
mm,
and it was calling me to step into doing what's right regardless of how I felt about it or regardless of whether or not I thought it was difficult so it's in my opinion it's the opposite of that in the
yeah,
sense when we say to our kids like why are you so lazy or we reinforce
yeah,
that if we
mm,
change how we speak in a way that reinforces who they are and who they are in a part as a part of us it draws them back into us and it also like reminds them that this is who you are like this is who we are um and this is how we do things like just I mean it
yeah.
enables you to help what I call the default program it enables to help put that programming into them that you want to, that will help them become the best humans they can be.
Yeah, because if you don't give them that programming, they're going to get it from society, from culture, right? And it's going to be negative.
Yeah.
And so no, I love that, man. We do the same thing. So we have kind of like our camp family values, right? And we enforce those like every single day, and it allows our kids to self-identify with that, right? And say that I am different. I am, a feathers or a camp or whatever the case may be, right? And these are our values, and that's just who I am.
Yeah.
And so, we reinforce that. My kids are tired of hearing it. Yeah, I do it every morning when I drop them off at school. And sometimes they're into it, sometimes they're not, but they know it. They know who they are,
Yeah.
and hopefully it helps once they get a little bit later in life, it'll just help them filter their decisions, right?
Yeah.
Through that lens of just like, hey, for me, we're camps, right? So they're like, hey, I'm a camp. I'm built a little bit different. And, we do the right things. We do the hard things. We do the fun things. And so like, does that fit my criteria of who I identify with? And if my peer group is doing it, if my friends are doing it, but I know deep down that I identify as a camp and we don't do that, like, I'm just hopeful that, they'll make the right decision.
It's funny because I think that I remember when, like, if I hear we're feathers, the rest of that statement comes right through my brain instantly,
Yeah.
right? So it's probably like that for your kids. It'll be like we're camps, all those things, and they
Yeah.
won't stop it. And I'm like, dad. But at the same time, you're totally programming them to be the way that honestly they're gonna want to be, right?
Hmm.
There's going to be that desire because we all have it to live in a society, to fall into what society does.
Hmm.
But I mean, when you look at anyone who's ever led anything, I mean, I have a background in the church, so when I look through the Bible and they talk about all of the guys, like the heroes of the faith, I'm like, dude, so many of these guys were jacked up, but they just did they went against the grain, right? And it's
Mm.
like when you look at leaders in general, there's all the masses going one way and the leaders are running back through those masses going, nope, it's this direction. I feel it. I know it. And they're getting beat on and they're getting punched and they're getting slapped and they're getting pushed down. And if they keep getting back up and keep going that way, eventually I keep in my head, I'm seeing the Patriot at the end of the movie where like
Oh
he
yeah, yeah.
running through them, they're all like retreating. He's like, no. And he's like, that's what I'm seeing. Cause eventually all the people go, wait, what? And they turn around and they're like, oh, we got to go this way. And they become that leader that changes and creates a movement of change.
Mm. No, absolutely, man. How old are your kids again?
19, 17, 8, 7, 3, and I'll have one newborn on somewhere at the end of February.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, I just want to keep going. I don't know, man. We got three. I think we're done, bro. Three is a lot.
With this, the sixth, the one that's on the way, honestly, when we knew we were pregnant and then like we had some complications with a couple pregnancies around Luna. So she's a rainbow baby. And then this one is also a rainbow baby. We lost one on either side of Luna. When we found out we were pregnant and like everything was a go and everything was healthy and good, both of us felt this huge piece like, yeah, this actually makes sense that this is our last one. So we aren't too like I'm in this group, the Men of Bedrock, with Adrian DeMonte. I don't know if you've heard of
Yeah,
those.
yeah. Yep.
So I'm in one of the cohorts with them, and we got talking about this, and I just said, someone was like, you can get some stuff snipped and fix that, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to make a bull a steer. Like you think about a bull, they're all vibrant and like, and then you see a steer, they're all docile. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So we'll figure out another way to not have more kids.
Well, I tell you, man, we got I got medically done.
Yeah.
And it's so funny though because like we still talk about it, right? And we talk
Yeah.
all the time. We're like, I don't know, what do you think? Like, are we done? Are we not done? And then like like my 2-year-old have just a massive meltdown, and I'm like, yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny you had this big gap there, right? So it's like, hey, potentially, down the line, right? Like maybe not right now, but what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I will say that was the older two are from a previous marriage, and then younger three are from my marriage with Meg. So there is that fact. But it's funny because I'm 43. She's an undisclosed number that we would say she doesn't want to have anymore either. And so it's like one of those things where we're both like, yeah, like an accident would be like a whoopsie baby would be like, oh, because we'll be really old. Like as it stands right now, I think I'll be 61 when the youngest who's coming, when that one graduates. And originally I would have been 45 when the youngest graduates. So it's massive, massive stretch. But I love it, man. Like I've always wanted a big family. So for us, this one being done with this one feels right. But
Yeah.
I love having all the chaos. Even in
Yeah.
even in moments where I'm like, no, I still like I look at it and I love it.
Well, where is Dad's Don't Babysit like heading? Like what's kind of on the roadmap for you guys? I
Yeah,
mean, you mentioned a book.
yeah. So I'd like to. I want to keep coaching men on this because I'm finding that again. I'll post something and people will start coming back to it, going, "Dude, that changed my outlook. It changed how my kids interact with me." The biggest one for me has been the like connect with your kids, like grab their face, tell them how grateful you are. Like, and I basically said what I say to my kids. A lot of times I can't say that without crying, because it hits me so deep. But like I've had so many men that reach out to me and go, dude, that has changed everything about how I father. That's changed everything about how my kids and I interact. It's been awesome to hear the stories of how that's going. So I just want to keep coaching men. I'm all for that. I'm working on creating a way to do that on a scale that like if you can't afford X, then you can afford this, and I'll help you here. If you can't, obviously you can follow me for free on Instagram, but like if you need closer coaching, I'm here for that. So that's what I'd like to see is book, speaking, coaching as it goes, so that I can continue to mentor dads to become the best they can be, so that their kids have the best example to live.
Yeah. Well, obviously your message, is resonating with dads. And like we talked about before, right? Is we're kind of seeing this growth, this, I don't want to call it a resurgence, but just this kind of rising, right, of dads really just looking themselves in the mirror and understanding like, wow, I'm not showing up in the way that I should, and taking accountability and ownership.
Yeah.
And they're looking for guidance, right? And it's not that like Nate is perfect or Drew is perfect, because we're not, right? But it starts with the individual person, and you, like you said, doing the things that you need to do, be self-disciplined, be that example for your kids, and then you'll start to set that example for others to follow as well.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. That's really all I want. I mean, when all this started for me, I was feeling a huge regret of my oldest leaving the nest and feeling like it's all over. Like I don't have what I used to have. And I don't. Like it's crazy when he comes over and we all hang out. The kids love him. Like he's far enough removed from them that it's like having like your favorite uncle come visit. Even though he's your brother, it's like that. And so like his connection to the youngest, like she adores him. It's like the only way I can put it is she feels about him at times, I think, the way she feels about me. Like he's like another safe place like dad. And that is awesome to me. But when he left the nest, I was like, wow, it's that part of my fatherhood is over. And it's true. Like I'm seeing it. Like we talk and we interact and we do the things, but he's doing his own thing. He's
Mhm.
going to college and he's doing his classes and he's working and so it's not that we don't interact. It's just that we don't have every night at home together anymore. And that's hard, man. That's hard to like live through and watch. And it's funny because I remember there were times where my dad, when I would leave for college, I'd see tears in my dad's eyes. And I'm like, why is he crying? Like, what's wrong with him? And I'm like, I totally get
I
it now.
get it. I get it. Yeah.
It's like Tired Dad. You know who that? You know him? Just
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
He posted one of It's a Wonderful Life. He posted a reel about It's a Wonderful Life, where I think it's the part where he comes back and he's like kissing all his kids and he's like happy about his life. And he said his dad used to have to watch that movie every year. And he said this is the point after having his own kids. He's looking at that and he goes, "Oh, I get it. Like there's so much I get as a dad looking back on why was he like that? Oh, it's that." And one of the main ones is he seemed to like get teary-eyed and cry a lot more the older that I was. And I think it was because he had hit that spot that I hit with Zeke, where he had hit that spot where he's like, it's all over. They're gone. They're
Yeah.
out. We don't have them anymore. And there was probably some stuff like I wish they were around more often. I wish I had done things differently. So they wanted to be around more. And so I look at that and I go, I don't want that for me. And I sure as hell don't want that for any guy that is connected to me. Like I never want anybody to feel the way I felt when I dropped Zeke off at school. And I thought to myself, I could have done that better.
Yeah. Like I got more in the tank.
I'll never want to be, I won't live that way ever again. And I don't want other dads to feel like to do that either.
Dude, I'm gonna start crying. Us just talking about that, man. Um, yeah.
Who is it? I forget who said it. It might have been Stephen Covey, but it's like begin with the end in mind,
Mm.
And I think that's how I don't know about you, man, but I got into this fatherhood thing like almost on accident. Like I wasn't planning on having the first one, but but he showed up. Like I've said to him, I didn't plan on you, but somebody wanted you here, right? So like you're supposed to be here, and I believe that about all of my kids. I believe that about all people. You're supposed to be here for something, and so like I didn't plan fatherhood, so I didn't like look at it as, oh, like here's my goals as a dad. And
Mm.
now I'm like, man, you know what? If you're not a dad yet, you need to think about the dad you want to be. And if you're a new dad, like you just now have a baby or you're getting ready to have your first, it doesn't matter where you are in it. I just think about those guys. I'm like, dude, sit down, think about the dad you want to be, and then start working that backwards, just like business, right? What's my business goal? All right, what do I got to do to get to that goal? Like you do that with everything, right? You do that with working out. Like, what do I want? I want to gain
Mm.
10 pounds. So how do I gain 10 pounds and stay lean? Like all of those things, you look at that at the end result and then you work your way back. Fatherhood is no different. It's just a longer game, right? It's just 18 years or 20 years, whatever that is. How do I work it back from there? What do I have to do? What do I have to do now that they're an infant to ensure that my connection to them at 16 is intact. That's the stuff that'll get me teary-eyed because I'm like, don't grow up so fast.
I know, man. I know. And it's so funny, man, because like my kids are, are so young, but like my oldest one will be 8 this next year, right? And then my wife and I were literally like just about to cry in bed last night. Like we were just like, holy shit, man. Like, like in any bit of like, baby in her's gone. Like she's that part of her life is over. And it's just crazy, man. And yeah, you're right. Like you have to think about because like, and I think you have to define the goal, but it's not like a business goal in the sense that like, oh, I want to have so much money in the bank. Like here's the exact blueprint, right? I think you have to be specific on the goal, and it's a touchy feely goal, right?
Yeah.
On like that, and like for me, it's like one of my goals, and I think about this all the time, is like when my daughter is 17 and she's at a high school party, and she knows she's a camp, she's not supposed to because we're different, right? But she makes a mistake, and she has something to drink. Like my goal is like I want her to call me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And know that like dad is there for her, right? And like to know that like yeah, I'm probably not going to be happy, right? But like she has the trust in me to like to know that I would much rather me come pick her up, than her to get in a car and drive. And so like that's my goal, right? And
Yeah.
then to your point, it's like we backwards engineer that, right? And so if that's my goal, then I need to be building trust, right, with my kid. And like, what does that look like? Like, what activities, what actions can I do to build trust? And to go back to our earlier conversation, part of that is self discipline in me, right? Because if I say I want to go do this thing and then she sees me be a hypocrite and not do it, like, what kind of trust am I building with her, right? Or if
Yeah.
I tell her that, hey, tomorrow morning I'm going to wake you up and we're going to go for a walk, and then I let her sleep in or something like that, right? It's like, okay, there's a little bit of trust erosion, and then another perfect example, and I've had to work on this a ton, is if she's acting out and I raise my voice at her, I yell at her, right, and get on to her. Really, that right there is losing trust. Because maybe she was just doing that, right, to measure my tolerance, so to speak, right, of like when is dad gonna like blow his lid, right,
Right.
and then she sees like there's a level that he does it, right, and so
Right.
now that gets ingrained in her of like, okay, well, dad's really gonna flip out now because remember this one time that I, you know, you didn't take the trash out and he yelled at me or
Yeah.
something like that, right? It's like, well, if you yell at her at the small stuff, like she's definitely not going to call you when she's had a drink at a high school party,
Right.
So
Oh, so true.
yeah, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So you kind of have to backwards engineer from there and really think about, like, again, what we go back to is the words that we're using, the intention we have behind it, and how can we really build that trust with them?
Totally, totally true. Yeah, I like, oh, so that was spot on, man. I think about I'm really good. I'm really calm in the big things. Like the one I always go back to, the poor kid probably is sick of me using it, but like when Zeke was 9, that was the first time he like tried to access pornography, right? Which is scary in one sense because the moment you like whatever age, and I used to work in like anti-trafficking stuff. And so what I'll say is whatever age you think you should talk to your kids about all that stuff, bump it back
Or
2 years.
earlier, yeah.
10. So, oh, 9, nope, 7. Oh, 7, no, 5. And that's scary as all hell as a parent because you're like, what? Like
Yeah.
there's no way they understand this stuff. But yeah, he happened to be able to get like work on it, and thank God he couldn't spell and all of those things that were not helping him. But it's one of those things where his mom freaked out, and I was like, all right, you don't get to talk right now because you are out of your mind about this. And I sat down with him, like, hey, buddy. And like, there was no anger. There was like, I remember like, I'm in my 40s. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Like we had to like walk into an abandoned house and hope somebody forgot their porn to find it. You know what I mean? Like that's like, if you're like 40, you know that, you feel that.
Yeah.
I remember I had to like find Uncle Jerry's like whatever underneath his bed or
Yes, Playboy. Yeah.
now it's at his fingertips, and it's like so much worse than what we ever experienced or thought of. But like there was nothing there for me. Like I seriously was so calm. Like no joke. I remember walking away from that conversation being like, I am the greatest father ever. Like I was like, oh, like heaven is shining on me. Like God is like, you got this, bro. Like that's what it felt like because there was everything in me was like, dude, I remember the shame I felt. I remember all the fear and the fear of getting caught, and now you're caught. And so now I'm trying to not take away the shame, but just help you understand that your desire to do that or see that is actually straight out of like, that's totally normal. Now we have to figure out how do we handle this and navigate this? But you're not a horrible person because you wanted to see a naked girl, dude. Like, trust me, you're not. You're like, cool, we're good. I just want to like now direct you and help you. But I felt awesome. But then he would like not take his stuff from the table to the sink, and I'd be like,
yeah, just explosion. Yeah.
total puke all over him with like disdain and hate. And I'm like, why? Why am I so awesome when it comes to like porn? And then dishes just blow me up to a level of like where I'm like seething. That is ridiculous. So but those two are so combined because if like you said, if I blow up over these small things, these small deals, then when it matters, they're going to go, oh my God, what if my dad finds out? Instead of, oh my God, it's time to call dad because I am in a big world of shit and I need dad. And that is right there is like, that's all I want is for every single one, honestly, for my boys, especially for my daughters. Like you said, like, don't get in your car and try to drive home if you drink. Like, don't get in another car with people who have been drinking because we've seen the carnage that can happen from that. We've known people or seen it on the TV or whatever. We know it can happen. So call me. I may not be happy, but I will be there. And I want them calling me. I want to be on the speed dial for all of the crap that goes wrong in their life because like they know I'm going to show up. Right.
Yeah. 100%, man. Well, Nate, what's the best place for guys to find out about, what you're up to and kind of some of the lessons you're leaving?
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if I said this before we started, but I was working on my website and realized, oh shoot, the website isn't showing up for this reason. I'm figuring that out. So I'm working on that. So website is dadsdon'tbabysit.tv. There'll be more videos there coming soon. It's not up at the moment. There'll be some merch there as well that I've worked on from some of the reels I've done. You can catch me at Nate@dadsdon'tbabysit.tv. If you're going to email me, that's fine. Or a DM on Instagram is actually, I check all of the spots just to make sure I don't miss anybody trying to catch me with real stuff.
Very cool, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, we'll drop some links down in the show description, for guys to go follow Nate and check out the new website, man. Just click all the buttons there and try to see if it's actually working.
Yeah, right now it'll probably be like this site is parked or whatever because I haven't published it. Again, maybe I should pay somebody to do that. I just haven't yet.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you for coming on, man. I mean, awesome discussion. I'm sure the audience is getting a ton of value from it. If you could go back and just kind of leave one lesson, kind of sum up our conversation and really like your message in general to dads. What would that one thing be?
You are the example. So be the best example you can be because they'll do what you do, not what you say.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah,
100%, bro. So, well, awesome. Well, guys, thank you for listening. Hey, if you got value from this episode, drop down below, give us a 5-star, shoot this to another dad. We don't run ads in the show, right? So the only way we're going to grow is by you guys sharing the show. You never know the power of a share too, right? Like we talked about that example of in the neighborhood and somebody just seeing that and having a drastic impact is like literally the act of you sharing the show with another dad that might be the catalyst for them, right? To start taking some of these actions and to take the first step. So do us that favor and share with the dad. And Nate, thank you again for coming on, man.
Absolutely, man. Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, guys. We will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the show and supporting our mission to change the culture by creating more epic dads. If this message resonates with you and you're ready to start becoming the husband, father, and man that you were called to be, I'd like to invite you to do 2 things. The first is to join our free online community called the Epic Dad Crew. Inside the crew, you will get access to resources, workout programs, courses, community, everything you need to start leveling up as a dad. We are not meant to be lone wolves. We are meant to be part of a tribe, surrounded by men that will challenge us and hold us accountable to living as our best selves. So hit the link in the description of this episode and join the Epic Dad Crew today. And if you are ready to accelerate your results and create massive change in your life, I'd like to invite you to join our 90-day Epic Dad Accelerator. Our goal with the accelerator is to help you create an unshakable foundation as a husband and a father, build unstoppable discipline and habits, get into incredible shape with a custom workout and nutrition plan, and provide massive accountability to becoming the type of man you want to become. If you are ready to radically change your life as a father in just 90 days, hit the link in the description of the show to learn more and see if the accelerator is a good fit for you. Thanks for listening. Now go be epic.